I'll make you a sandwich. You want a chopped cheese? You want this? You want that? Like, no problem. You come to us every day. I got you. I don't know. Maybe that's like a New Yorker spirit. You know, everybody thinks like New York is like this hustle and bustle and like people are mean or rude. Far from it. It's so loving and so kind. And I want to embody that in this book.
This is Taste. I'm your host, Eliza Barbanel. Paola Velez is an award-winning chef, activist, and author based in Washington, D.C. She's the co-founder of the viral grassroots bake sale, Bakers Against Racism, and the author of a great debut cookbook, Bodega Bakes. We brought Paola into the studio to talk about her impressive career, including acting as a culinary diplomat for the State Department, and the unforgettable recipes in her book, like pecan plantain sticky buns. Paola Velez, this is Taste. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's so fun to have you here in New York. How has your trip been so far? Have you eaten anything good?
So far, I've baked 2 cakes, a bunch of cupcakes, and I hope that my Jell-O mold's set. But I actually fell asleep. I woke up at 4 yesterday in DC, and then I fell asleep in New York yesterday. So that's all I've done.
All you've done is baked things and you haven't had the chance to eat them. When you make something like for a photo shoot like this, do you stick around to try to eat it at the end of the day, or are you kind of over it at that point?
I'm not over it. I just feel like I can eat my stuff anytime I want, right? So I let other folks enjoy. And I tell people to bring like Tupperware and stuff. So like they could take it to their friends, you know. I don't believe in wasting, so I hope that everyone like eats and partakes of it. And if I do start to notice, I will stick around sometimes if I start to notice that it's not moving a lot, and I'll try to donate it to like a community fridge or something.
Yeah, that's a nice thing to do. I can't help but suspect that on this shoot, people will take the cake home or bring it to a friend or something like that. And you're from New York originally, so when you come back home, is there anywhere that you try to eat just to get a taste of childhood or anything?
So I would say that I try to keep up to date with what's happening in the dining scene here. It's so much like more unique than DC, and that's not to say that DC's dining scene isn't so unique, right? Because it is like a place to be seen now when you think of food, you know. But I feel like I just want to try new things, you know, like maybe I want Burmese food, you know what I mean? Or maybe I want to go to like, is it called like double chicken, please?
Double chicken, please.
I love their key lime, like mixed, like the drink. I'm pretty sure they're going to be like, she's never allowed in here again because she botched the name. But there's this drink that tastes like key lime pie.
Whoa.
And it's like really awesome. Like you should eat before you go because then you're going to keep drinking. And it's like they have one that's like soba noodles and like it's just really fantastic stuff, you know? So stuff like that. While we get some of it in DC, we don't get that far into like creative spaces because it's a political space, you know? It's a place that you go and you voice your rights, you know? But sometimes that limits, you know, who can rent a small business. And in New York, it's a lot more accessible to rent, you know?
Yeah, I would imagine that if you live outside of New York, but you follow a lot of the food media that's based here in New York, you probably see a lot of things on Instagram. And when you're here, you got to figure it out for yourself and see if it's like actually good or fun.
Yeah.
What are you saying is back on the menu in DC right now that you made?
Oh, okay. So there's a small bar, like a 20-seat bar called Providencia, just off of H Street behind Maquetto, owned by my friend Eric Brenner Yang. And we just kind of like collaborated, and I was like, can I put something on your menu? So I made a baked Alaska kakigori.
Whoa.
Which is kind of going like, I guess it's like cult viral.
You're like, I guess it's viral.
Almost. It's not
Almost.
there yet. It's not there yet. But I think it's to the point where like we're trying to keep up, you know? But it's really exciting. Like, this is the first time in a long time that I've had a dessert on a menu where I can, like, sneakily watch people from, like, this over, like, there's this little lounge upstairs that has, like, a cutout window, and I can see right down into the bar, and I could watch people eat. And it's so cute. And people are like, I've never had ice and meringue together. And I'm like, welcome to my world. You know? So it's really fun. That's why I'm like, while I want to gatekeep a lot of things for myself, if I gatekept that and like somebody else that talks about it, let's say like Feed the Malik, she's an influencer in DC. If she gatekept that, kakigori, if she goes and tries it, then there's a whole audience of hers that won't be able to understand or know it, right? So maybe I'll share later a few of my New York gems. Maybe.
We'll come back to it, but I want to break down Baked Alaska kakigori for a second.
Yeah.
So what does that look like when it comes to the table? How are you making this pastry magic happen?
Okay, so we fly the ice from Japan.
Whoa.
Uh,
Casual start. Okay.
you know, and we have like one of the best shaved ice machines on the market right now, which is like you don't need that because I grew up eating like frio frio, which is shaved ice in Washington Heights or anywhere where you have like a Latin community, and you can do the same, really close to the same effect with like this metal tool. You're gonna be like super buff afterwards. But I think really it boils down to having like a quality structure, right? So like my portion is only like 6 ounces. And then I layer, if I want to do some ice, I'll do some syrup. So I have like this really fun, what I call dulce milk, which is like a little bit of condensed milk, with some half and half, right? I shouldn't probably be like sharing the whole secret.
Yeah, someone's writing this
but
down
yeah,
right now.
somebody's like, oh my God, but maybe I could, maybe I should. I don't know. Why gatekeep? Maybe this will inspire me to make something else, right?
Mhm.
But then you pour some of that milk, and then starting off, I love going to the farmers market. I have this club called Antisocial Farmers Market Club, and we kind of meet, and like if we want to talk to each other, we do, but sometimes we don't, and that's fun too. So I go like to the farmers market every weekend if I can, if I'm in town. And I found some like Virginia plums right when they were coming into season. And I made that into a syrup with some guava paste. And I made sure that it was like sweet and sour and just like really fun. Because guava paste can be very heavy if you're not careful, you know? And I layer those like two syrups together in between layers of shaved ice. And then actually the meringue from my Dominican cake recipe in Bodega Bakes is the meringue that I use in the kitchen right now, right? Which is like half of what I wanted to do with the book was like to do it for home cooks, but also there's a lot of chefs that don't feel comfortable with pastry, and I wanted to break it down the same way that I think about pastry. I want people to think about that too. So this is like a hybrid meringue. Most of the time when you think of like meringue, you think of like light and airy, but utilizing the same proteins in the egg and sugar boiled to a certain point, you can stabilize your meringue to the point that it gets even more fortified with cold elements like ice. So it is a very strong, stable meringue that is humidity proof because I'm in Washington, D.C. And I use this like icing piper tip or something it's called. Wilton, if you hear this, I'm sorry, I messed up the name. But, and I just squiggle these designs on the kakigori, and then I brulee it to make it a baked Alaska. And it's in its essence, it's very simple, but if you weren't able to stabilize the meringue the way that I did, the protein in the egg would break down once it comes in contact with moisture. But in this case, it does the opposite. It becomes even stronger, and we tested it, and it stayed like frozen and upright for almost 20 minutes. Isn't that crazy? Science.
Chemistry, maybe physics also. I don't know. That's so incredible to hear about all of the components. I feel like as a diner, I love going to a restaurant or a bakery and I see something on the menu and just the name alone sells me on it.
Mhm.
And I feel like Baked Alaska Kakigori is successful because it's two separate things that people might know and love,
Mhm.
but you're putting them together.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's something that you come back to when you're developing recipes, or what kind of makes something a Paola like signature dessert?
So I will say that I try to push the boundaries of my own limits, right? So like I might have made this dessert now. Um, and eventually there's going to be a lot of copycats, right? People are going to figure it out or they're going to buy the book and they're really like, thank God she put this meringue recipe in
They're
there.
going to listen to the podcast. They're going to figure it out.
Right. Which is fine, right? Half of baking is not like if we imagine if like French patisseries were gatekeeping, like the way that society is kind of now, we wouldn't have any baking techniques to kind of glean off of and learn from. So I make something, I enjoy it. Maybe it's my dessert of the year or something for me personally, right? And then I figure out how to like top that, and I kind of compete with myself. Like I'm too busy focusing on, how can I change, the structure of a plantain, a sweet plantain? How can I swap out even just a sweet plantain, like in the plantain sticky buns? How can I swap out corn syrup for sweet plantains and utilize the starch in the plantain to kind of emulate the starches in corn syrup, little things like that kind of like make me really excited to be in the kitchen. Not everything works for a home kitchen, but this book, I tried really hard to make sure that everything worked. Like I tested it like a billion times, and then I got Mary Dodd, my recipe tester. She's also the recipe tester for Dory Greenspan. And, it was really special because I made a friend, in Mary. And she kind of like held my hand through this book process because it's very daunting and scary to like compile more than 100 ideas and I pray that people like it, but it was something that she said that kind of like blew me away. She's like, this is the first time in a very long time that I felt like I was learning stuff, and I was like, Mary, why would you say this? Now I'm emotional. Yeah.
I love that. That's such a huge compliment. And I do think it gets to the core of what cookbooks are, which is really good advice and technique. And,
Mm-hmm.
and the goal is to really empower people to make kinds of things.
Yeah.
I'm interested in how you landed on the recipes in this book because you have such a broad spanning baking career. You got your start working in restaurants like Jacques Torres and Christina Tosi. You have done pop ups. How much of the book are recipes that you've maybe used in some context versus things that you developed from scratch?
So, a lot of the recipes I will say come from these like things that I call mother recipes. They're recipes that I have figured out how to work it in a home oven, in an industrial kitchen, in high bake, like high altitude baking, right? Plus or minus a few things,
Hmm.
at sea level, below sea level, right? Um, Little things like that, right? Where I know that these are like the foundation of who I am, my essence, what I want in a dessert. And then, once you learn how to understand the ratios of those mother recipes, oh my God, the world is your oyster. Oh, that was very New York of me. I'm sorry. Oyster. But it's one of those things where um, a lot of it, I mean, my job now is social media and marketing, right? So brands come to me to make sure that I can talk to a different audience than the audience that they normally reach, right? Particularly my audience, right? And I was sitting down and as I read through all the cookbooks that I have, cookbooks that were coming to me in the spring and last year fall, before that, right? Like I read and I was like, what can I give people? You know what I mean? Cuz like if I'm being honest, even before I submitted the proposal, I had all these recipes done, So like it wasn't like we shopped the proposal, and then all of a sudden I was like, what's that mean? It's like,
Yeah.
right? Like I wasn't trying to like scramble to make these recipes. Like there were already things that I was like, here's 150 things that I can make confidently that I can teach other people to make, right? And then thank God they cut it down from 150 recipes. One of those things that I kind of like sat with myself. One, it took me 2 years to even get to like the proposal to like figure out what I wanted to say because I was like deathly afraid of creating a book that would go on clearance. You know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
would just be like you make a cookbook and then all of a sudden it's like on the clearance, like and I'm like, bum, bum, bum,
The whole podcast is just like TikTok audios.
chronically online check mark.
Check mark. Little ding.
But it was one of those things where I was like, what can I give to folks that might view this as their own personal like baking Bible, right? Like maybe they don't have like the flavor Bible, right? Maybe they don't even understand like or geek out with pastries, right? Or food in general, right? Maybe they're a consumer of foods, right? And they trust folks like myself to just make stuff for them because they're like an oven, ew, right? And then I kind of was like, all right, this is not a book to prove something to people. Like I've won a lot of rewards already, right? And I'm very grateful for everything that I've gotten. This isn't a book to prove to people that I can bake, right? Like I think we've
We've established that.
yeah, a little bit, right? So now I can prove to myself that I can step aside from the big picture, from the limelight, and let a new generation of bakers rise up, a new generation of people that want to, maybe they want to own a little cafe bakery and they just don't know how to start. And they'll pick up this book and they can use these as their mother recipes, understanding how to maneuver techniques, how to look at ratios, how to even just swap out ingredients, and then maybe, just maybe, I won't be the only Dominican chef when you Google Dominican pastry chef on Le Google right now,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, I think it comes across in the book that you've created, like even in the title, Bodega Bakes Recipes and Recipes for Sweets and Treats Inspired by My Corner Store. How does that ethos come across in the book and the recipes?
so a big portion of the book for me is like giving this homage to bodegas. A lot of people maybe don't even like New Yorkers maybe don't even think about bodegas in this way. But once I moved away, I realized how much of a third space a bodega is.
Mm-hmm.
It is literally the connecting point between a neighborhood, between communities. It doesn't matter your sex, your age, whatever, like you can go into a bodega and buy a chopped cheese or order, a black coffee and go about your day, and everybody respects each other. Everybody respects the bodega owner. Everybody knows the bodega is, our our safe zone,
Everybody loves the cat that lives at the
Oh yeah,
bodega.
that's the manager.
Yeah, he's in charge.
But like this is like a love letter to that because when I was in New York growing up, the bodega owners knew each and every one of the kids, especially the one right across from my middle school. They knew all of us. We would all come in and we would buy, I don't know, bubble yum or I don't know, sour straws and juice jugs. And they knew exactly when our parents had plenty, when they didn't have. And the amount of times where a bodega owner would be like, "Oh, you're not ordering your usual today. Why don't you go ahead and grab it? And then give me what you do have," And they would take like this L for the ultimate like greater good
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that we were okay and our childhood was protected, like, and that doesn't come from just like a regular, corporate supermarket.
Food Town, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Food Town themselves, they even are a little bit more aware of what's going on,
Yeah, I shouldn't be disparaging Food Town because that's my local grocery store also, and I love it.
The sales, I mean, I love it too. But, and I kind of like found that this they gave so generously. So I had to put myself and realize that I need to give equally as generously as they have given me things. Even as like a line cook, when I came back to New York after I moved away with my parents, for like a few years, I moved away and I went to culinary school. I came right back to New York and I made the unfortunate mistake of living on my own. Uh, New York is not for the faint of heart. And I remember my bodega order was, a roll toasted with Munster cheese and a chocolate nutriment, and sometimes that could be like $2.50. But as a line cook, barely making, minimum wage at that time, $2.50 is a lot of money. And if, maybe I needed to buy a fancy chef's knife or because, kitchen culture, and back in 2009, it wasn't what it is now. Like now somebody, like I had an open door policy. Like people could come to me and go, Chef P, you've offended me. I want to talk to you in the office. And I'm like, well, what did I do now? you know, I gave the cooks the kind of like this thing that I didn't have in the industry. And back then in 2009, you definitely didn't talk. You didn't look people in the eye. You're just like, yes, chef. And like you keep moving. And if they wanted to bully you that day, you just let them, right? And sometimes they would be like, what is this piece of crap knife? What is like, why do you have this apron? Blah, blah, blah. And you would have to spend money that you didn't have to fit in, And being a girl and I look young, I sound young, and I'm really goofy, to my detriment. Like I never fit into kitchens, And I had to do the most that I could to maintain just employment, like the minimum. And sometimes I didn't have money. And like the bodega owners would notice. They're like, you didn't order your Monster on a roll with your nutriment. Why? And I'm like, oh no, I just want a butter roll today. That's all I want. And like they're like, so what do you eat throughout the day? And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna like say eat half of this butter roll now and then later I'll save the other half for like lunch dinner. And they're like, why don't you grab your nutriment and I'll make you a sandwich. You want chopped cheese? You want this? You want that? Like, no problem. You come to us every day. I got you. And I don't know, maybe that's like a New Yorker spirit. Everybody thinks like New York is like this hustle and bustle and like people are mean or rude. Far from it. It's so loving and so kind. And I want to embody that in this book.
This book goes out to all the bodega owners everywhere,
Bow, bow, bow,
honestly.
bow.
Maybe it'll be sold in the bodega with everything else also. That would be the ultimate dream.
Maybe the cat can promote for me.
Yeah, the cat can paw mark every
Ooh,
copy.
yeah.
So I want to talk to you about Bakers Against Racism, which is a grassroots, like global, I would say, bake sale that you co-founded in 2020. And today it's officially the world's largest bake sale, raising over $2.5 million for social justice causes. What does it feel like to see that growth? The world's largest bake sale is incredible.
I think during that time, I didn't know if we were going to survive,
Yeah.
And it just felt like we were fighting one uphill battle to then have to like circle back to something that I thought we were moving on from. And that's not to say that after 2020, everything's been like rainbows and sunshine. It's not. It's a dumpster fire, you know? But it felt really great to be in community with folks that I would have never, ever like stepped into their space or their world, I was in community with folks that had 3 Michelin stars, like I was in community with moms who bake for fun,
Mhm.
And it empowered a lot of people, not just to bake, right? But to kind of like stand up for what they believe in their own way through baked goods. I always say like you can't argue back if your mouth is full of cookies. So like it's one of those like disarming tactics of displaying humanity. Like yes, everything is a fight, right? To fight for my rights, to fight as a Black woman, as a Caribbean woman, it's always a fight, right? But what if I'm tired of fighting, and I just want to love and I want to just be treated like a human. And that's what Bakers Against Racism was. Like, I just wanted people to understand why we were asking for our lives to matter, why we want to be not seen as equal, but just regarded as humans. And it was wildly beyond my dream, my comprehension. Like, I don't think I've ever seen those types of numbers before. Like, I really only wanted, like, I think it was like something like 80 something bakers, you know what I mean, to participate. Like, I thought that was like a lofty goal. And like, we go back to like this generosity. People want to be good. People want to give. People want to be kind. But society, capitalism, the world teaches us that if we're not hardcore, if we're not cutthroat, that we're not going to win in life and we're not going to have success in life. And there's so many people that just want to be nice, you know? And like, not just nice to be like nicey nice or fake nice. Like, genuinely, there's just good people that don't want anything in return. But yeah, it feels good. Great.
Yeah,
Great
it feels
even.
good. I mean, I think it's so interesting to see how something can grow and evolve. And that was basically 4 years ago. And now what's happening with Bakers Against Racism today? Is it just grassroots that people can decide they want to do something underneath this umbrella and then they sign up through the website?
So they don't even have to sign up, right? So everything is on the website for free 99. You can download all of the graphics. You can download the like talking points, any copy, even what we did for the first ever bake sale. I just give that freely for folks that want to emulate this. You know, we're a lighthouse organization, so we're not a nonprofit. We don't accept any money. I fully fund it myself through my own working endeavors, or, you know, this is like my contribution. If we have to have a tally at the end of our lives, this is my contribution to that. And I never accepted any money to run it, you know? People can do this. They can adopt this banner and bake for the causes that they believe in, as long as it's not in detriment of anybody or harming anyone, and it's uplifting. You know, some of the funnest ones that I've seen was like Black surfers of Nova Scotia. You know what I mean? Like, and like I always tell people, like, you don't have to just bake when we're in peril or in trouble, right? Like, bake for Black joy, bake for Black love, you know, bake for causes that uplift the community, you know, that help others. And so much so it's Bakers Against Racism to this day. I've heard a lot of testimonials now that we're allowed to go back on the road. I'm able to meet people, you know, it's impacted a lot of people's lives, and not just in the way of like, oh, I participated in a bake sale. You know, a lot of femme presenting, a lot of BIPOC folks have utilized these, you know, like this rubric of how to make a socially distant bake sale, pickup, charging, etc. And they've kind of adopted it as a business model. And in a way, inadvertently, I've showed people how to create a small business. And I've had mega influencers tell me that taught them how to run their small cottage bakery, to like moms that now can not just be stay-at-home moms. Now they're, you know, stay-at-home moms that bake for a living, you know, and that impact, I won't know. Maybe at the end of my life, or once I've gone and passed, maybe somebody will take the time to figure out everything that BAR has done, and how many lives it's impacted, and like courses of people's lives that it's changed. But for now, I just keep trucking forward, keep creating, and try to be better than I was yesterday, you know?
Yeah, I really appreciate what you're saying about how that format for running the business has been passed down to people, because I do think I've run bake sales myself. The amount of work that goes into organizing is so dizzying, and it's also a lot of things that you kind of don't realize until you realize that you should have had it. Maybe it would have made your life easier. So for you to be providing that upfront, I think is really meaningful, and certainly the way that people have made it a cornerstone of their professional lives is really special. And I want to talk to you while we're talking about just kind of the impact of food and its many powers. When I was doing my research, I saw that you currently serve as a United States culinary diplomat with the State Department, which
Yeah.
I didn't realize was a job that exists, but I love that it does and that you're the person that has it. So can you just tell me, like, what does that mean? What do you do with that?
For sure. So, I think there's like, don't quote me on this, but I think there's like 100 plus chefs that are a part of this program of diplomacy. And what we do is we represent all the best parts of the United States. You know, the United States is complex, and our history is trying. And we're not perfect. But what makes the United States is the people that reside within it, the cultures, the communities, cities, towns, states, and all of us have like this unique perspective through food, the greatest connector, to showcase what it means to be American and how, my mom, a woman who was a biochemist in her country, who then came to America in search of a better future, was able to then give her daughter everything that she could never dream of. For us as U.S. Diplomats in the culinary space, it's a fun job. We get to meet amazing people. We meet a lot of politicians, a lot of politicals. I cooked for the Prime Minister of Australia. I've
What did you make for the Prime Minister of
Oh,
Australia?
yeah, I made like this really fun take on funnel cake, like a state fair. So I
You said,
wanted
"Here's America."
yeah. So I wanted them to kind of like understand what my most cherished moment of going to like a New York City State Fair was. And like I took funnel cake that was lightly spiced. I took some pumpkin pastry cream and a little bit of cremous, and kind of like layered it in this like fun whimsical way with pops of croquants, so that there was like crunchy elements. The funnel cake was like crispy on the outside, fluffy on the inside, and was lightly dusted with powdered sugar. And it was like, here's fall in America, but also here's like a state fair and a bite. It was really fun, you know what I mean? And like, I hope that through this program, people can find a lot more in common with America than they can find differences in.
Yeah, I love that. You basically did pumpkin spice without the pumpkin spice.
Yeah.
So the program is mostly that you're baking for diplomats when they come into the White House?
No, we can go out and
Yeah.
go to different countries. We represent sometimes the vice president, the secretary of state, and we are engaged in a plethora of different events. So it's not just baking. So I represent like Afro Caribbean cuisine and Americana baking with a twist.
Yeah. I love that. That's really cool. I want to talk to you a little bit more about the book while I have you here.
hmm
I think this is one of the most colorful cookbooks I've ever seen, like not just the bright purple cover, but all of the styling and the recipes inside of it. What was it like for you to be on the shoot, and what was the vision that you had for the book when it comes to the design?
It was very exciting. I stayed on set for 10 days with them, not because I wanted to be like type A, but I wanted to make myself available in case I didn't, correctly articulate a certain step, or they just had questions and I wanted to be there with them. It was really fun. It was a really great time to meet, Lauren, who's the photographer, Hadley, who's the food stylist, Summer, the prop stylist, and the whole team. I even was baking yesterday with Catherine, who was one of the food stylist assistants. We had two pregnant mamas on set, which is very exciting for me. At first, they admittedly told me they were nervous to tell me, because I guess I'm hiring them to do stuff for the set. And they were nervous, and I was like, "Why? I'm a girl," you know.
It's powerful energy to have some pregnant moms around.
Oh yeah, the more bodies to support this book, the better, you
Yeah.
know? And it was one of those things where I like everything that we did, everything on set, we were laughing, giggling. You know, I learned what lightning crotch is. Please Google it. I won't bore you
It's
guys.
not a food term, we're just gonna say.
And we created magic, you know what I mean? Like, I would remember when Lauren would put up the pictures on this whiteboard, you know? And I was like, "Dude, you're so good at what you do." And she's like, "Dude, you're so good at what you do." And we would stare and just kind of like hope that other people see what we saw in that moment. And I will say that people are seeing it, you know, people are the little glimpses that I've been able to show to the public of this book before October 1st has been nothing short of magical. And it's literally like, it's like the whole magic of the manager bodega cat in the pages of these books.
Yeah, I think, there are so many baking books out and they do so many things so well and they're shot so beautifully, but sometimes things can look a little bit the same. And when I was flipping through this book, I was like, yeah, this is Paula's book. This cannot be anyone else's book, which is a huge accomplishment.
Thank you so much. I will say, like, in developing some of these recipes, I did a lot of market research to understand what was on the market, what is normally placed in a cookbook, and then what can be a little different, you know? Maybe I don't see a lot of pectin utilized, you know? And pectin is one of those things that is so accessible. You can find it anywhere you can find mason jars, you can find pectin, you can find citric acid, and now you can make green apple bars with like this very easy technique of pâte fouille. So I teach people very classical, very quote unquote hard French techniques or Italian techniques, and I break it down. I just like make it simple so that people don't feel intimidated. I always say, like, yes, baking is a science, but it's an applied science. Yeah, you know?
So to close today, I want to play a rapid fire taste check game with you. So I'll give you a category. You tell me the first answer that pops into your head.
Okay, I have anxiety.
It's okay. Deep breath. We can do it like medium fire. Your favorite baking book?
Oh, I will say I love Claire Saffit, all of Claire Saffitt's books. They're beautiful.
Your favorite season for baking?
Spring or fall, because it's easier to control the humidity and the temperatures around you than in the winter and in the summer.
Very DC of you to say. The most challenging recipe to perfect in your book?
For myself or for
Ooh, maybe both.
oh, hmm. I will say there's one kind of like bread from the Dominican Republic called pan de agua. It's seemingly simple, but there's a lot of TLC that goes into making it accessible to the public. In the Dominican Republic, we only have like professional patisseries and bakeries, and like nobody at home bakes, you know? So this is like very crazy for me to make a baking book for Dominican folks, you know? But pan de agua is really hard, you know? And I ate so much bread.
Okay, your go-to item to order in the pastry case at a bakery?
I like to eat Paris Brest. Yeah, I think it's like, it's not easy to make, right? Not because it's choux or because of the filling. It's just to stabilize it in a pastry case. It has to be really fresh in order for it to taste good, or else it'll be soggy and kind of bummy. So when I can tell that the craquelin is really crunchy and that the choux pot of choux is good and it's holding up, and then like if you're doing a cremeux, if you're doing a pastry cream, etc., it's not breaking. Oh my God, it's like heaven. I'm like Homer Simpson.
I like that you're looking for the thing that it could be bad or it could be excellent, and you're hoping it's going to be excellent.
Yeah.
Something that you would never make from scratch. Is that a thing for you?
No, I like baking a lot from scratch. So I went to culinary school for savory. So baking and pastry was like my decompression slash escape from being a line cook. So I really enjoy baking, and I really enjoy testing the limits of my own home kitchen, and any restaurant kitchen that I go into.
Your favorite local bakery in DC?
Oh, I love Bread Alley. They have a really great baguette, and it's not a bakery, but Isabel Koss, she's from New York. She's in DC now. She's the best, 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 best. I call her number one flan. I'm the number one flan of Isabel. So
I've been dying to have her pastry, so the next time I'm in
so
DC,
good.
I have to go. Maybe we can go
Call
together.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, a bakery that's not in your neighborhood that you wish could like magically be your neighborhood bakery.
I travel for good desserts. So I will say that I go out of my way to support, like I'll drive to Philly, I'll go down to Richmond. I'll even fly down somewhere if I have to, just to try something. Like if I see that it's like really unique and stellar, I'll go out of my way to support other bakers.
So what's a place that you traveled to go to that you're like, they should open a DC location and I want it to be on my block?
So I wish that Sub Rosa from Richmond, Virginia, would just magically appear in DC. If you need crowds funding,
Hit us up. Final question. Fictional food scene, like from a book or a movie that you wish you could eat in real life.
There's this movie called Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, and that opening scene of the movie, like as the movie starts, you see the father cutting all his vegetables for his daughters. Like I wish I was one of his daughters, because I feel like he was showing so much love in his own way. And although I'm very emotive and very expressive and very goofy, I don't emote all of my emotions like love and care in the way that I wish I could. I just cook for people. So when I saw that, I felt so seen, that I wish I could be a part of that.
Yeah, that's
Scene.
such a beautiful scene. And it's been so much fun talking with you. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
What's up, Eliza? How are you?
I'm good. I'm bursting with kitchen updates and egg updates to share.
The egg updates are amazing. When we posted that on social, there were quite a few comments. Let me just let's recap what you were talking about. What was happening with these eggs that you kept buying?
Double yolk after double yolk after double yolk. I think when we last spoke, I had cracked 14 eggs from, right, so one carton and then two into the next carton. They all had been double yolks. I'm now in the third carton from the same brand, same grocery store, and things have shifted. So after maybe like 2 full cartons in the third carton, we had a single yolk egg. But the single yolk is gigantic. So it still doesn't feel quite normal, but the double yolk streak has officially ended in my home.
Was there a little bit of a pause and a little disappointment when that single yolk appeared?
Yeah, well, we're not eating eggs every day. So in general, it's kind of like once, every other day or weekend, like you're cracking them and it's always exciting. And then, it was just dead silent in the kitchen when we cracked the first single yolk. And I felt like I'd been punched, honestly.
You felt it was a gut punch.
Because after a certain point, it's like, oh, yes, all eggs have double yolks. Like, you just come to expect that because that's your reality. And I didn't buy a scratch off, but like I was at a Liberty, like, WNBA game, and they were doing, like, the, you can, like, buy into the raffle in the stadium. So we bought into that. And I was convinced we were going to win because of all the double yolks. But we lost, and now the luck has officially ended. Although I'm only one egg into the carton. So the rest of it, who could say?
We'll be back with updates. I was feeling there was like a force field or some kind of supernatural thing happening in your kitchen. How it had nothing to do with the actual agriculture. The chickens weren't laying double yolks. They were arriving with single yolks, but then because they were in this space that they were somehow multiplying.
Yeah, maybe I should bring the scratch off into the kitchen and do it there.
I think so.
Maybe being in the kitchen is what would make it happen.
Interesting.
What's your first thing?
Well, speaking of yolks, I could have really used yolks. I baked, Eliza.
Wow.
Did some baking. I'm interviewing Zoe Francois at Rizzoli, and I wanted to make one of her recipes. She did this terrific book about cookies, and I love it, and we're going to have a conversation on the show. But of course, I didn't bake cookies because I just wasn't feeling cookies for whatever reason. It's a great book. I made her key lime pie, And it was amazing. It really was a hit. First off, obviously, homemade graham cracker crust never goes wrong in a 9-inch cake or a pie pan. But really, she adds cream cheese to the mix,
Whoa.
to the filling, which is something I'd never really thought about. I'd usually just followed the condensed milk, egg yolks, and of course the key lime juice that everyone buys because that's the only one you should buy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, did you buy key lime juice or did you just do normal limes?
No, I bought that Key West. It's in that
Mm-hmm.
really cool lime colored bottle.
Yeah.
Everyone knows it's there. So I did it, and the cream cheese really brought not just a little more tanginess, but added some real texture where it didn't just feel like that kind of sometimes key lime can be a little too much sugar and doesn't have a body. This had a lot more body, and I think that cream cheese is a great answer. So.
I would say to me that's more of a key lime pie cheesecake than a classic key lime
For
pie,
sure.
but it does sound very good.
Yeah, definitely the purists may argue that it's not a key lime pie. I would have liked to have gone full cheesecake. I know you're quite the fan of cheesecake.
Mm-hmm.
And you are. We should actually do some cheesecake content. I feel it's one of those things.
I'm ready.
I mean the cheesecake from Hannah Ziskin, you got to get that one day. It's truly the best cheesecake I've ever had. I'm sorry if this makes you jealous.
No, I'm about to go to LA, so I'll try to get it then.
Yeah, try to go, and maybe Quarter Cheese can throw you a cheesecake. All right, what's your next one?
My next one is I made just some really delicious sandwiches that I wanted to talk about.
You made some sandwich. Let's go. Let's talk about it.
Okay, one recommendation, which is that I think I've been thinking a lot about tuna melts, and so I wanted to make one at home. I cook with sardines at home as my default tin fish, just for climate reasons, honestly. So what I did was I chopped up a lot of cornichon and basil from the green market that I had, and then just mixed that into Kewpie mayo with some grated garlic and lemon juice, and then flaked in that tin fish, and then grated cheese on top and boiled it. And it was my perfect not tuna melt. And I really think the takeaway is just that if you have a lot of fresh herbs on hand and you're trying to find a good way to use them up, especially something as summery and delicate as basil, the tuna melt application is a really good path forward.
I mean, the sardines is so killer.
It's so good.
Killer. And Taste's former co-host Anna Hezel was always a fan of sardines even before she wrote her book. So I love this idea. I've never done a sardine melt personally.
I mean, it's quite good. I think any tin fish would work in this application, but for me, sardines are kind of the everyday tin fish to use. They're very affordable. They have a better climate impact than tuna, for example. So make your own tuna melt with whatever you want, but definitely put basil in it.
I love it with the fresh herbs. Good job.
What's your next thing?
Well, we never plan these. We really don't. And in fact, my next home cooking adventure involves sardines as well.
Really?
Absolutely. I love cooking with sardines. And this weekend, I made something I make usually 3 or 4 times a year, usually 3 times in the summer and once in the winter. And it's a pasta that I was in Portugal years ago, and we had a great house, and we had some, cherry tomatoes laying around, the standard garlic, some pasta, and we had all these amazing Portuguese sardines. And I made a pasta with it.
Yeah.
And it's basically I start with a lot of garlic and a good amount of olive oil. When you're doing a fresh tomato sauce, I like to do at least a quarter of a cup of olive oil in there, 10 cloves of garlic, then throw in the fresh cherry tomatoes. And again, I try to obviously get the fresh tomatoes. I've done them with Hot House in the middle of February, and they're fine. You can also use muti or any kind of canned tomatoes, but I like doing with the fresh tomatoes. So you cook that down. You're showering it with pecorino. I always like pecorino over Parmesan Reggiano, just because for me it matches the sharpness of the sardines. Then I throw in the chopped sardines. And you're kind of cooking it down, and it's kind of, cherry tomatoes are becoming very cloudy, and it's all about cooking it to the right level of cloudiness. You don't want to have it too thick and watery, but you also don't want to make it dried out. Add more olive oil, mix it with the tubular pasta rigatoni or whatever you have, plate it, shower it with more pecorino, and then obviously olive oil. It's a really easy pan sauce, and I fucking love it because sardines do not overpower with all those tomatoes. It really is a nice hint, and each bite gets a little bit of that tin fish. And I as well love sardines. It's a super easy to cook with fish.
Mm-hmm.
Terrific.
That sounds great. And I have another tin, so maybe I'll make that.
Yeah. What's your last one?
My last one is a renter-friendly kitchen renovation project
Ooh.
that I spent all of Monday
Yeah.
doing with Shirley, which is basically that the kitchen floor in our kitchen is gross. It's like
Yeah.
gray. It never looks clean, even though we clean it all the time. And I really just feel like spiritually my apartment kitchen should have one of the old like checkerboard linoleum floors instead. I did buy these tiles 8 months ago, and then I just did this yesterday. So I've been sitting on them. But you can get like peel and stick vinyl tiles on Etsy. They have all kinds of different designs and patterns. And I went for like an off-white kind of cream color. And then instead of a black contrasting tile, this kind of dark mossy green that just felt a little bit less harsh. And it took us the whole day because we spent a long time like cleaning the floor and
Yeah.
trying to scrape, years of like paint splatter.
The
from
grout is the worst part,
everything.
right?
I mean, there honestly isn't grout to
No.
go over. There's just literally old paint caked onto the floor and all sorts of things that would keep it from sticking. So you prep the floor and then you just roll out these vinyl like peel and stick tiles over it. And the trick is to use a bench scraper, like what you would use for baking, like a plastic one. And you can just kind of smush out all of the air bubbles, like when you're putting a phone protector screen on. But it worked really well. And then we sealed it with clear caulk and then didn't step on it for 24 hours. And it looks great. And I'm just feeling like other people should do this too.
It's such a great idea to take your home kitchen, if it's a rental, and like update it with like a few little like spruce it up a little bit. And we're gonna link to the show notes some of these tiles that you can buy. I love this idea because I mean, do you feel like you're cooking like better now that you have like a floor that feels a little cheerier?
I haven't been allowed to step on it yet. It's drying. So I couldn't say. I don't think I'm going to be cooking any better. And I know that someone else is out there and probably saying like, why would you spend all day doing something to a rental? But I don't like have a big apartment in general. And I also spend a lot of time in the kitchen. And it was very satisfying to do. And I do think that it'll just feel nicer. And like that's its own reward.
Is there something else on like your honey-do list for the apartment? Now that you've done this one project, it's been successful.
This was one of the earliest projects ideas that I had, and also the last one I took to complete. But I'm hopefully about to get my lease renewal, so then I'll have a whole fresh year of projects. What's your last thing?
Last thing is I was cooking from my cookbook Korea World and I actually was enjoying this recipe. Not actually, I enjoy many of the recipes, but there's a recipe I want to call out. It's black bass jorum from Danny Lee, a great chef in Washington, D.C. And I've made this a number of times when I was writing the book, but I finally got to just do it after having enough space from the book. And what I like about it is it's a recipe to braise big Korean or daikon radish. So you start and you kind of like take like a big moo and you like quarter it up with like big fat chunks, like maybe 2.5, 3 inches, and you simmer it in like a light anchovy stock, like anchovies, kombu, a little bit of pepper, and then like that's green pepper. Sorry, not like black pepper. I want to make sure I'm clear. But like you're simmering it and you're cooking or braising the radish in the stock, and then you're adding this amazing sauce that we've come up with: soy sauce, fish sauce, of course, gochugaru, gochujang, mirin, garlic, ginger, sugar, and soju. So you've got this. You blend that up in like your food processor. You can keep that for a long time. You can use it for multiple jorums, and you're adding that sauce. The key is incrementally. So like half in the beginning, you drop your bass in, you keep adding a little more stock, and it's braising. And really, I mean, I love cooking it with like red snapper or bass, but really when it comes down to it, it's all about the braised Korean radish. When you have these big chunks that you can like ladle and eat it with a little bit of rice. I love this dish, and I love jorums. So
well, it sounds really great and like a good transitional recipe to make for fall.
Thanks for sharing your home cooking adventures, Liza.
You too. This is Taste is hosted by Matt Rodbard and me, Eliza Abarbanel. The show is produced by Shalia Harris and Pat Stango and edited by Clayton Gumbert. Theme music by Steve Rydell. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter for updates on all cool things happening.